Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a massive story that's quite literally sending ripples right through the American scientific community. Based on some brand new reporting from Science magazine, we're going to neutrally unpack the recent structural and, frankly, pretty controversial leadership changes happening over at the National Institutes of Health. Let's get right into it. So here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at a major new NIH appointment. Then we'll profile the appointee, John Gaetanis. After that, we'll zoom out to examine a broader hiring pattern. And finally, we'll check out exactly how the scientific community is reacting to all of this. Okay, Section 1, a new NIH appointment. So, pediatric neurologist John Gaetanis has just been tapped to head up the NIH's Child Health Institute. Specifically, NIH Director Jay Bhattacharya named Gaetanis to lead the Eunice Kennedy Shriver National Institute of Child Health and Human Development. He officially takes the reins on August 23rd. Now, Science magazine is actually reporting that this move comes as Bhattacharya is reportedly facing some pressure regarding leadership picks from HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. $1.7 billion. That is the annual budget of the institute Gaetanis is stepping in to lead. To put that into perspective, this isn't just some minor administrative post. It's a massive financial responsibility that dictates exactly what pediatric and maternal health research gets funded for families all across the country. That huge number really anchors why this specific leadership change is such a big deal in the medical field. And it's not just the money either. 1,100. That's the number of employees at the institute that the incoming director will be directly responsible for overseeing. So we're looking at a massive budget and a huge workforce. Naturally, this kind of makes you wonder, who exactly is the person taking on this enormous job? Which brings us to Section 2. Let's look at the profile of John Gaetanis. Looking at his medical background, Gaetanis undeniably has some really strong clinical credentials. He earned his MD from Brown University and trained at Harvard-affiliated hospitals. On top of that, he's actually served as the head of pediatric neurology divisions at both Brown's Hasbro Children's Hospital and at Tufts University. Plus, he's published mainstream research focused on epilepsy and autism. So from a strictly clinical and academic training perspective, his resume is definitely well established. But here is where things diverge, and this really illustrates the core of the current debate. Usually, an NIH leader has a robust history of receiving NIH grants and participating in their peer review processes. Gaetanis, however, has absolutely zero record of NIH funding. The agency's database shows no evidence of grants, and sources couldn't find him listed as an outside peer reviewer either. Furthermore, Science magazine reports that he holds views on vaccines that are highly controversial within the mainstream medical community. Let's unpack those views by looking at his specific affiliations. According to the reporting, Gaetanis serves as a paid expert witness in federal vaccine courts, specifically where families claim neurological harm from childhood vaccines. He also sits on the board of the Medical Academy of Pediatrics and Special Needs. That's an organization that promotes alternative autism treatments like hyperbaric oxygen and leucovorin, which fall outside mainstream medical consensus. Oh, and he also appeared at a Make America Healthy Again, or MAHA, autism event back in September 2025. These affiliations definitely highlight a significant departure from your conventional NIH leadership. All right, moving right along to Section 3. Let's zoom out and look at a broader hiring pattern. The crucial point to understand here is that Gaetanis is not just an isolated hire. NIH Director Jay Bhattacharya has actually been tasked with filling top slots at 15 different NIH institutes. These spots were left completely vacant after multiple directors were pushed out or fired last year. Now, Bhattacharya's first 5 picks were seen as highly conventional choices, but these latest selections, they're drawing some really intense scientific scrutiny. It's a clear shift in strategy. Think about how Gaetanis fits into this emerging network. He joins Dorothy Fink, who was recently named Deputy Director and Acting Director of the very same institute, the NICHD. Fink actually has a history of overseeing an HHS communications pause and the closure of DEI offices. Then consider Stephen Quay. According to Politico, Quay is Kennedy's pick to lead the Infectious Disease Institute, NIAID. Quay is a biotech executive and a vocal proponent of the COVID-19 lab leak theory, and, much like Gaetanis, he comes with zero NIH funding history. We're definitely seeing a distinct trend here, favoring outside-the-box figures over your traditional research veterans. Finally, let's head into Section 4 and look at the reaction from the community. First up, we have the perspective of a former colleague of Gaetanis, Dr. Phyllis Stenery. She's the medical director at Hasbro Children's Hospital. She noted her surprise at the appointment, stating his strengths were purely clinical and acknowledging that he had no NIH funding. But she also directly pointed out his polarizing nature, noting he was sought out for alternative therapies and had a really deep investment in unconventional approaches to medicine. That concern about his experience is echoed by David Mundell, an autism researcher over the University of Pennsylvania. He specifically highlights the massive disconnect between Gaetanis' resume and his new administrative responsibilities. Mundell is really questioning the wisdom of placing someone with absolutely zero NIH experience in charge of a $1.7 billion budget and 1,100 employees. He explicitly cites concerns over Gaetanis' ties to broader political positions. And then we see an even starker warning from Jeremy Berg, the former director of the NIH's Basic Research Institute. He argues that this broader pattern of appointments shows, and I'll quote him directly here, no evidence of even a rudimentary understanding of how NIH works. Berg contends that these choices appear to be driven strictly by political alignment, rather than your traditional scientific and administrative qualifications. Which leaves us with a massive question to ponder as we wrap up. How will these non-traditional appointments actually shape the future of NIH research? We are witnessing an unprecedented shift away from standard research credentials at the absolute highest levels of government science. Whether you view this as a much-needed disruption of the status quo or a fundamental shift in the core values of public health administration, the impact is gonna be profound. So how do you think this new leadership style will ultimately alter the landscape of American scientific research? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Stay curious and keep learning.